Welcome to the Who's Left podcast, a show about Indiana politics, history, and culture from the unapologetic perspective of the Hoosier Left. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers, and I'm recording from Bloomington. I'm very excited to introduce today's guest. Not only is she the podcast's first statewide candidate, but a major party nominee for the state's highest office. Dr. Jennifer McCormick spent 10 years in the classroom and another 15 as a public school principal and superintendent. In 2016, Jennifer, a lifelong Republican, successfully ran for state superintendent of public instruction to play a pivotal role in shaping education policies and championing the needs of all Hoosier students and educators. Once in office, however, she clashed with members of her own party who had a different agenda for Indiana's schools. After her one term, the GOP legislature eliminated the position as an elected office and gave the governor power to appoint the state's top educator. Since then, Dr. McCormick has jumped ship to the Democratic side and will represent the party as their nominee for governor in this November's election. We'll talk about her time in the classroom, in administration, and in public office. I'll ask about her positions on reproductive freedom, woke culture, legal weed, the U.S.-Mexico border, China, policing, climate change, and the IEDC. We'll talk get out the vote strategy, and I'll press her about the party switch. But first, I need your help. Who's Left is dedicated to calling out Indiana lawmakers, their financial backers, and the networks of people actively working to make our lives worse. Those whose policies endanger children, those that sow grief in our homes and communities. I work to highlight these bad actors so we can replace them with more empathetic leadership and also shine the spotlight on the Hoosier activists, organizations, and elected officials who are doing the hard work to build a more just, equitable, and compassionate Indiana. But I can't do it without you. I rely on your financial support from paid subscriptions over at scottaaronrogers.substack.com. For $5 a month, or only $50 a year, you can help me push our state in a better direction, and help my family in the process. Even if a paid subscription doesn't work for you at this time, you can still help. Subscribe at the free level over on Substack. Set your favorite podcast player to auto-download new episodes of the show. Rate and review the podcast on Apple or whatever platform you use. Follow us on social media at facebook.com/whosleft. That's HOOS left. And I'm personally at ScottRog78. That is SCOTTROG78 on Instagram, Threads, and the platform everyone still calls Twitter. And on Mastodon at ScottRog78 at Hoosier.social. And now, for those who want to see my face, we are also debuting on YouTube and TikTok. The handle on both of those is at Who's Left. But most importantly, pass on the word. Forward the newsletter to a colleague. Don't just like, but share on social media. Radicalize your friends. Let's make beautiful propaganda together. With your investment, a full-time Who's Left looks like new content every day. It looks like zooming out to see how the forces at work in our state function nationally, even globally. I do not plan on paywalling any content because I believe in open access to information, and your support helps make that content freely available to all Hoosiers. But I need your investment in order to do this full time. To those who have contributed already, thank you. You have my undying gratitude. To everybody else, thanks for listening. Now here's the interview. Dr. Jennifer McCormick, I so much appreciate you joining the Who's Left podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
So, for those who don't know, Dr. McCormick is running for governor as a Democrat, and I believe is the only Democrat in this year's race, or has at least been officially endorsed by the party. So, let's get to know her. Tell us about your life growing up as a Hoosier and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so born and raised in Indiana. I have lived in rural, suburban, and urban areas of Indiana, which also I think is extremely helpful for what I'm attempting to accomplish here. But I grew up in Newcastle, Indiana, and went to school K-12 there. I was actually born in Scottsburg, and then my family moved to Newcastle. But went to K-12 in Newcastle, lived on the family farm. So I'm a fourth generation farm family, farmers from Adams County who came to Henry County and kind of stabilized there, but grew up on the farm and have since returned to that farm. Professionally, before I once I graduated high school, went on to Purdue, Ball State, ISU, the whole drill on the higher education. But I was a special education teacher, which I think has molded a lot of what I believe and being a champion for all. Also, I was a sixth grade teacher, an elementary principal. I was a local superintendent at Yorktown Schools, which is nestled right between Anderson University and Ball State, which is interesting. And then went on to be our 44th state, last elected state superintendent. I am a wife of an educator. I am a proud military mom. I just have one child, and he just turned 26 this week. So that ages me a bit, but awfully proud of him. He's a great young man. And so I have two four-legged little guys at home that I'm also very proud of. But right now I'm serving as or the chairman of a board for an architectural firm, Gibraltar Design, which we work with K-12 schools and higher ed. So
Fantastic.
in a nutshell, that's who I am.
Okay. Can you tell me just a little bit about your time as a special ed teacher? My son was a special needs kid, and just like some of those people that helped him along the way were just like the most beautiful, wonderful relationships. It's really just such like rewarding, fulfilling work, and just I don't know, it just draws lovely people.
Yeah, I loved it. It taught me a lot. I probably learned more than I felt like sometimes I taught the students. But when I graduated from Purdue in elementary education, it was at a time where there were no teaching jobs, if you can imagine that. And I got a job at the Henry County Youth Center, which was a facility for students who were pulled from homes for a lot of reasons or who were incarcerated as a youth. And it had two different sides of the facility, and I worked both sides. And during that time, there were a lot of kids who were identified with special needs. I also was very involved in helping them with their schoolwork and just life. And so it was the best training ever. And then when I left that job, I got into a special education position at a small rural school in Delaware County, West Del, which was awesome. But I loved every experience of it. What I loved about special education is obviously the students. I mean, I had wonderful students throughout my tenure as a special education teacher, but you have that unique experience to get to know the family more so because there's a lot of involvement. Also, the support systems around the child. So whether that's OT, PT, a behavioralist, it was a team effort. And I got my eyes opened up to the need for more in the field. And I also had my eyes wide open to the need for more services. I'm also very clear-eyed on the expense of those services to families and the important role that our schools play in that. So it was very humbling. And again, I feel like I was a good teacher, a good special education teacher. So much of that's about relational in special education. What I didn't like about that position was the paperwork. And I think it takes a lot of people away from that position because it is daunting. Where I wanted to work with kids, I feel like so much of my time was being spent on paperwork, and that too needs to be addressed.
Oh, so thank you for talking about that. I want to fast forward from there a little bit, but also rewind from our current point, what seems like a lifetime ago, and talk about 2016. So that year, you, as a Republican, defeated Glenda Ritz, the Democrat, to become state superintendent of public instruction. She had gotten into clashes with the Republican supermajority in the assembly and with the governor. And so you coming in was supposed to smooth things out, and you were supposed to play ball with like their privatization efforts, and things didn't exactly go that way. Can you tell us about your time there?
Yeah. So when I ran for office, my intention was truly, I was a local superintendent at the time, and I knew that there was some room for improvement. from that state level. So I didn't question the intentions. I didn't question the people. I just questioned the operations. And so when I ran, it really was not heavy partisan for me. It was about there was an issue. A lot of us were talking about it. Who was gonna run? And so when I got into office, I truly took it seriously as all means all. I was serving all, regardless of political affiliation. I was helping all kids, all communities, all families. And then what I quickly learned is the same thing that Superintendent Ritz was up against, as far as just the incredible amount of pushback. Now, there's different ways to handle that, and it wasn't easy no matter what. But I felt like our team did a good job of trying to balance that pushback and staying true to having a voice that was still being listened to, but also trying to getting some things accomplished. So, it wasn't easy. The State Board of Education could be quite difficult, which was heavy appointments, and we're there for a reason. We are up against, as you mentioned, a lot of the privatization and the choice issues, and we really used a lot of data and our messaging to help with that. But yeah, it was incredibly difficult. I'm not going to pretend it wasn't. But and I knew you think what Glenda Ritz was up against until you are the one that's up against it, and there was nothing easy about it. But our team did an amazing job.
So you managed to get some good things done while you were there. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, we got a lot of good things done. And I think if you ask school systems, they will still tell you that it was an amazing time for them. We were in direct partnership with them. We did great work in the social, emotional, behavioral learning space, the SEL space, that's now a dirty word. We did amazing work in STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and math. Did amazing work in literacy, and a lot of it got shut down, which here we are today talking about the disaster in literacy when we were trying to get that going as soon as I walked in the door. And I know Glenda's team also had some things in place. So, there were a lot of good things that we did. We tried to kind of systemically get things organized, which I think was helpful for schools. We were very much about the customer service of schools. So we did a lot of things right. Our goal was, how do we help educators? How do we help school systems so they can best serve kids? And that was always our focus, was the kids first, always focus.
So the supermajority, the legislators, and the governor have differing views on public education. So, you butt heads with them. Did you decide that you were leaving the office after the one term, or did they decide to make the office an appointed office before?
No, I decided to leave the office. Now, there was a lot of rumblings. A lot of people remember there was a lot of rumblings prior to that, as far as making an appointment. Indiana has not been shy about that since Mitch Daniels' first year in office, and probably prior to that, I don't know. But I know starting then, that's when I was aware of the rumblings where they were trying to make that into an appointment, which I think is a mistake. I think that is the voice of the people. I think that is the avenue in which people have a voice into half of our state budget and 90% of our schools that our families choose. And they took that away. And they took it away for a lot of reasons, but mainly I would say power. I mean, it's about empowering and pushing agendas that the majority of people they knew wouldn't get behind. So, but I did. I made that decision to leave office for a lot of different reasons. But part of it was I feel like I could use my voice better at the time, in maybe, different avenues, in which I did continue to do by helping Democratic candidates, by using my voice in other ways, by helping schools. And so now I think, this is another way in which I can, serve Hoosiers.
So on your way out the door in 2020, you're still a member of the Republican Party in good standing, but you are endorsing Democrats for certain offices during that year's election cycle. That's correct?
Yeah, I got myself a little sideways according to the party, when I went on the bipartisan listening tour with Senator Melton at the time, now Mayor Melton from Gary.
Yeah.
And so when I went on that listening tour, truly it was a attempt by both of us to like show a Democrat and a Republican going on the road, and that it can be done and we can survive it. And we're going to, and we were friends, and, we had difference of opinions on some things, but we were like, let's do this. Let's listen to the people. We had a great response. And I remember a reporter saying, they took you off the website. And I'm like, who took me off a website? And they're like, the Republican Party. I'm like, I don't care. I didn't even know I was on their website. I mean, it's like, that's not why I was in office. That's not why I ran for office. That's not why I would ever do what I was doing to begin with. And I wouldn't do anything differently. But yeah, so I did leave the party probably earlier than that, as far as just, making sure helping who I was going to help, and changing gears, because for me, it was about values. When I went into office, I did it for making sure Hoosiers had a voice, they had opportunity, and they were empowered, just like I did as a classroom teacher, as superintendent. I mean, my whole professional and personal life. I mean, empowering people is what I was set to do. And so, it's not about using power over them, it's about empowering them. And so when through all that, it was about, I saw that not happening. I saw that the Republicans, their values and my values were clashing. And I thought, I can't be a part of this. I also taught kids for 20 years that character mattered. And I saw a party getting behind a man who clearly didn't have character that was, or that had character that was concerning. So I was like, cannot get behind that. Never voted for Trump, never will vote for Trump, never was behind Trump, never will be behind Trump. I just cannot get behind a party who is behind that type of leadership. To me, it's nonsensical.
Yeah. So I guess was there like a final straw? What that you were like, okay, I'm a Democrat now. And when you officially made that switch, I don't know, does it cause you to like look it back and go, I mean, like, I don't know, why was I a Republican in the first place? Like, I don't know, did I go along and get along, or did I hold those core values? Because I'm coming from the left edge of the party, and I'm like, well, no, man, I knew that was garbage the whole time. So
Yeah.
I guess, tell me about that evolution.
Yeah, so compared to a lot of people who are political junkies, I was not really politically involved. I mean, and I was like most of Americans, like most Hoosiers, you hear the messaging and you're not knee deep in it. And so coming from a farm family, that we were pretty conservative, however, we were always accepting. And so I look back now, and now that I know the messaging that probably the Republican Party for decades is kind of hijacked as their own, but really I didn't see it reflected once I got there. I saw the Democrats who were fiscally responsible. I saw the Democrats who were fighting to empower people. I saw the Democrats who were fighting for opportunities. I did not see the Democrats trying to waste a bunch of money. I did see, however, the Republicans spending recklessly, which was a waste of money.
Yeah.
So what I had grown up believing and thinking, like most Hoosiers that I've talked to, once you really educate and are informed and better educated and informed on issues, yeah, I mean, it was easy for me to switch those parties. But I do look back and think, wow, was it always this obvious? And I just wasn't as informed as I should have been. But I would say that's true to a lot of people.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, most people don't have time to absorb themselves in the news cycle every day. It's exhausting. It's anxiety inducing. It's hard to see the forest for the trees when the trees are coming at you really fast.
Yeah.
So you said you did not vote for Trump in 2016.
No.
Did you vote for Hillary Clinton? Did you vote third party? Did you leave that one blank?
Yeah, I mean, I usually don't leave something blank unless it's a real problem, or like I'm just not as informed as I should be. But I did vote for Hillary Clinton. I've not been shy about, like, was that my ideal candidate? No, in a lot of ways she wasn't, but she was. She had some good points of view with women's reproductive freedoms. I know she was a champion for kids and has been for a long time. She had some great, world foreign policy experience. So, I did vote for Hillary Clinton, but also, I mean, I was looking at Trump, just the whole character of him. and thinking, we didn't really know how exactly he was going to lead on that national stage because he hadn't been there yet. But just the character alone and all the baggage coming with him, I'm like, that can't be what represents the United States. I mean, I'm like, that just can't be. And obviously, here we are again. But yeah, I have real concerns about going forward.
Yeah, I mean, the man is a danger to the republic. But I can't.
He's a danger to the world.
Yeah, I can't fault people too much. You have to give people grace who voted for him in 2016 before they saw what it would really look like. I mean, like I said, I came from the left edge of the party. I was disappointed Hillary Clinton was the nominee. I was a Bernie Sanders guy, and I had that minute where I thought about Trump. It's like, what the hell with this thing? The game's rigged. We need to blow it all up. But I talk to people that I care about that would be harmed by those policies, and they're like, hey, I know you're disappointed, but this was really important to me. And I think it's important for people to see that. Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's interesting because what I see sometimes is, on the Democratic Party, everybody wants the ideal candidate where you check 10 out of 10 boxes. And if you don't, it's like, I'm not sure, I'm not sure. Whereas a Republican will be like, you checked 5 of the 10. We want to win. We want that office for a lot of different reasons. You're our candidate. It is so different in that ownership of and I know why, but it goes back to, that winning mentality of to find that candidate that you check all those 10 boxes is really difficult to do, especially now where it's so divisive and extreme. And, people have their own strong opinions about a lot of things, which I think is good, but I think as a party, we're going to have to really do a deep dive into, you may not check all 10 boxes, you may check 8, but this person checks 0.
Yeah.
So the lack of, voting or involvement is not an option.
Okay. Glad we're clear there. So I want to move on to this year's campaign. Stop, living in the past and talk about the now. So public education is your area of expertise. So, primary, secondary education, the grade schools, what is Indiana doing right and what are we doing wrong currently?
So we're doing some things that are right. We still have an emphasis on STEM, which is, I think, incredibly important. We are still at the local level. A lot of them are re-emphasizing the arts and the creative part of things, which I think is incredibly important. We're given the good fight against book banning, which I think is incredibly important. We are focusing on literacy, which is long overdue. And so there are some things going well. What's really a disaster and a crisis, and we all know what's coming, is we have seen K-12 as a snapshot in time from, K through 12. And that's a loose K because we don't require school till 7. So keep that in mind.
Wow.
But K through 12. So if you really look at what we need to do, this is systemically, we need to worry about birth through 3 because there's a whole lot of fundamental things in expressive and receptive language that feed right into what we're trying to accomplish, but never has a conversation. That means universal childcare that's affordable and accessible, that is of quality. That means universal pre-K. That means a solid K-12 education that is funded adequately. And let's talk about the COVID impact. The same old funding, the little bit of percentage funding on top of that, we're going to have a generation of COVID impact that is not good. And what's coming behind it is not good. And so we need to have an honest conversation about that, but then also post-high school. So seeing it as a system, Indiana has gotten that wrong. And my opinion on that is other states are doing it right, but we want to do it on the cheap and we want to skip steps. So if someone says, in order to do it right, this is going to be expensive and it's going to take, 7, 8 steps. And we're like, well, we'll do it for half. And we'll do it in 3 steps. It's like they're playing Name That Tune. It's like, it doesn't work that way. Like, you're going to have to see it as an investment versus an expense. And that is where Indiana's not getting it right, which I will get right once I win.
You, you talked about that, an investment, right? And as we're not investing properly in our education at the K-12 or at the, post-secondary level. So we're experiencing this brain drain. The best and the brightest of Indiana are leaving because we're not investing in the future. Like, how do we reverse that?
Yeah, and that's not easy, right? But a lot of it is our young people are watching policies that are attacking women,
Mm-hmm.
that are attacking LGBTQ, that are attacking, what books we read. I mean, they're attacking our water, taking our water. Young people are watching that, and they are way smarter than a lot of us in the fact that they're like, we want inclusivity. We want protection of our environment. We want to read the literature that's going to make us better. We want our LGBTQ family and friends to feel protected and respected. They are so passionate, and they're so hopeful, but they're very clear-eyed on what they want. And then you've got Indiana producing these policies that are counter to that.
Yeah.
And that means they have options. They can leave Indiana. So we've got to figure out how to make sure that we're fighting against those policies, but we have a governor who's using that flat platform to do so. And how do we do it? It's boards, it's commissions, it's the courts, it's the agencies, it's the platform to empower down ballot. I mean, it is a powerful platform, and that doesn't mean I want to be like all powerful. It's just the platform in itself, the authority behind that would lend itself to such a hopeful promise for those young people that we've got to get it.
Yeah. Turns out, the best and the brightest in our state don't want to live in Gilead. You've said that reproductive freedom would be your first priority in office. Now, given that the state currently has a near total extreme abortion ban, how do you plan as governor to claw back some of that bodily autonomy for the women in this state?
Yeah, and you know this, Scott. They're coming after IVF. They're going to come after birth control. They're not going to stop.
Right.
They're not going to stop. And so as a governor, first of all, vetoing, which I understand the vetoing powers are a joke here in Indiana for the governor. Let's just be real about it. However, sending the message of the veto is powerful. Also, with the courts being up,
Yep.
You've got the 3, and then you've got the governor who appoints. I'm like, that is a game changer. That is a game changer. Also, you have state agencies, you have state boards and commissions. For instance, the boards that, our current AG is putting our healthcare practitioners and physicians up against and threatening their license. That board is heavily appointed by the governor. So there are things that can be done in order to counter that. I mean, what a wonderful thing for a governor to stand up and say it's time for ballot initiatives, for significant change. They don't want that because they know that the majority of Hoosiers will mirror Kansas and, other places, Ohio, that have been successful. They don't want that. They don't want us to have a voice. And it is time a governor stand up and say, let's go.
So, Republicans constantly use the word woke as a pejorative. What does woke mean to you?
Yeah, so they've hijacked the term, right? So woke is just for many of us, that term was always an awareness. It was being educated, being informed on a lot of societal issues. I mean, it was just being in tune to things and being well educated on it. And they've really hijacked it to be like an extreme term that is someone who is just, way out there on issues. But I think the majority of people, if you really look at the definition of being awake on some of these things, that they can get behind it. It's just unfortunate it's been hijacked. It's a hard one to break through because the messaging from Trump played out in that and is stuck.
On the opposite end of woke, what if I want to get sleepy and I need some assistance? Do you support legalizing recreational cannabis in Indiana?
I was not know where you're going with that. So So with the legalization of marijuana, here's what I will say. I think Indiana needs to take those steps toward that. However, we have got to learn from our neighbors who have made some mistakes.
Mhm.
So we need to have a well-regulated industry infrastructure in place, and that would maybe start with the medical marijuana to make sure that it's rolled out in such a way that it's not a mess. And so I do think it's time. We're losing out on a lot of revenue. I talk to a lot of people in the healthcare space that are wanting that as their own decision, that they wanted to partake because of medical issues and they're not feeling like they're able to do that legally in Indiana. Now, don't kid yourself. They're telling me they're going to get it. They're leaving the state of Indiana. So it's not they're going without. It's just they're like, this is ridiculous. It's all around. And so there's so much usage in Indiana, which again, I mean, I'm not promoting, hey, let's just free for all, but I think it's time for our state to move in the direction of having that really good infrastructure and looking at medical for sure.
Is there a state that's doing it well that you would model Indiana after if you could?
Well, I think they all have parts. So, people who have rolled it out instead of going 100% recreational, I think we can learn from different people in different parts. Would I say someone's got it perfected? I'll be honest, I've not found that. But I do think that, learning from those who probably, that I know would be helpful as far as what did you do that went well? What did you do? Being one of the last to go in that respect has some benefits because we've got a lot of states that can help us. So is there a perfect model right now? Someone who just did it so well? No, I don't think so.
You visit Michigan, visit Illinois, you partake when in Rome?
When I visit?
Yeah. Yeah. No? Okay.
No, sorry.
Fair question, though. So, Mike Braun's campaign ads focus so much on the U.S. Mexico border. Last time I checked, Indiana's nowhere near the border. What are your thoughts on the situation down there, and what can the governor of Indiana even do about it, or should they do anything about it?
And it's interesting because people have said, what does that have to do with that job, that particular responsibility of the job? Well, I think it's a stretch what they're trying to do. Obviously, we all know what they're doing. What I will say is whomever gets elected as the president, obviously the governor of Indiana is responsible to make sure that we're taking care of Indiana and doing everything with the federal level, regardless of who it is, to do what's right for Indiana and push back when it's not right. Also, you had the governor that sent the National Guard down to be part of this hot mess. And so that plays that we're in this whether we want to be or not. We just had a bipartisan bill that we also had those who represent Indiana vote no. And there were Republicans and Democrats that said, this is the best it's been in decades. Like, let's push it a little. So I think the goal for most people I talk to across Indiana, regardless of political affiliation, is would you be a governor who would support an immigration system that is reformed and that people have a pathway to citizenship, doing it the right way, but also keeps citizens safe? And I don't think that's asking too much. It can be solved. But what we're seeing now is you have got Donald Trump and a lot of the people who follow Donald Trump that aren't wanting it solved. And so we get commercials from a gentleman who has been endorsed by Trump and has endorsed Trump. The lieutenant governor has endorsed Trump, and they're all acting like, there's this crisis and the Democrats aren't wanting to solve it. And that's just not true. It's not being accurate. It's not being truthful with Hoosiers. So I understand why they're doing it. I don't agree with it. I do think immigration,
it's their entire strategy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it needs solved, but it can be solved if people are willing to do it in a bipartisan fashion.
Along those same lines, with the border and that having anything to do with Indiana, a lot of the candidates are also taking strong stances against China as a major plank in their platform. That's foreign policy. Is that something even in the governor's purview, or is this just like old school McCarthy era red baiting? Like, do you have a foreign policy plank in your platform for Governor Indiana?
Yeah, I mean, like any country that we do business with or that is interested in our farmland or that, we export import. I mean, any company, obviously, we're going to pay attention to, right? We're worried about national security, but we also have economic development. So clearly we would be playing on the international stage. And so that only makes sense to be aware and have a good person who is in charge of all of that. But I mean, yes, that awareness is incredibly important. But and so, yes, that has to be a piece of it. What I'm not hearing from Hoosiers is a big conversation about China right now. They're like, I can't afford housing. My groceries are too expensive. They're tearing down my public schools. I can't find childcare. I get $15 an hour and I can't make it. I'm hearing every day issues that impact Hoosiers. Although, yes, we have to pay attention to international issues, 100%. What Hoosiers are wanting from a governor is
Yeah.
fix childcare, fix housing, fix gun violence. That's what I'm hearing about.
Another one of the big talking points on that side of the aisle is police. Police, police, police. We need more police. Given that violent and property crime are at like 50-year lows, do we really need more police? Or are we better reimagining policing, maybe taking some things off of their plate, let them deal with the bad guy stuff, and maybe let somebody else deal with the domestic calls or something? Perhaps addressing the root causes of criminal behavior. What say you?
Yeah, and I think you hit it there on your last statement. Part of this is we're so reactive, and I support public servants, and I think most Hoosiers do. We want to keep our police and our sheriff, law enforcement safe, but we also want them to be, their actions to be held accountable and their behaviors to be held accountable as well. So I think there's that. I don't think that's anything new to a lot of Hoosiers. But what I will say is the root causes to our increase of gun violence, and especially amongst teens, can't be ignored. So we've got so many guns on the street. We are a state that'll push back against sensible gun violence prevention measures. I mean, we just keep pushing back, and that's not sustainable. There's just a lot to be learned about also local autonomy in this space where our state, again, Republicans will say local autonomy, local control until they don't like local decisions. And they're like, just kidding. So that's not sustainable. But there are a lot of good local models, good local organizations that are helping to try to combat a lot of what we're seeing with the community violence. But, and if they say, I have to trust a mayor who says, look, we're 15 or we're 50, depending on the size, or we're 200 shy in our forces and we need some manpower, that's one conversation. I don't have all that information from that individual local levels, but I think empowering the local to do what they need to do, but also addressing the root causes. I mean, mental health. I mean, we are pretending like there's not a mental health crisis in Indiana. And so when you ask a police officer or you ask, anyone to go to a home, even, a first responder of any sorts to go to a home and there's a mental health crisis there, that has such potential to be not good. And so where is that? Where are the healthcare providers? Where are the resources? Where's the conversation? Where's the finance? Where is it?
Exactly. You're talking about local models and local governments doing good things. I live in Bloomington. Our local government is doing their best as they can on a local level to mitigate climate change. So first of all, is climate change real and man-made? And then, how should Indiana be mitigating its effects? Like, what are we going to do when it's 125 degrees in the summer and the corn doesn't grow anymore?
Yeah. So interestingly, Indiana is there. There is a U.S. climate alliance that is bipartisan with governors, and Indiana's not a member. So I think recognizing not just the local, but also our international, our world role that we play as Indiana in being part of the solutions and making sure we're learning from our partners and our neighbors and making sure that we have a shared commitment to we've got to do things differently and we've got to put the resources in it that are necessary. industry, and we need to look at economic differently. So we're not having environmental blackmail at the cost of economic development. Our LEAP district is a perfect example. So there are a lot of pieces that go to it, whether it's, we're chopping our wetlands play into all this, our forests play into all of this, our carbon emission plays into all this. There's just a lot of conversation that we need to happen. But like you said, can we admit it's a problem? Step one, is it a problem? Yes. Two, can we play a role in that is necessary? And I would say yes. But you have to have a commitment, and you also then have to have just an amazing team that would look at that environmental piece differently. For one, Indiana needs to have a water management program and a plan. We don't even have that in place. So there are just some very, I say simplistic, some very low-hanging fruit pieces that would have big impact, but it's a willingness to acknowledge there's a problem and acknowledge that we have to take responsibility as a state in that problem. So it's a long answer to yes, there's a problem, and yes,
you sort of walked into what I was getting at next, and when you mentioned the LEAP project and the tentative plan to pipe millions of gallons of water from the Wabash River aquifers down to Boone County for a potential semiconductor manufacturer. Do you support that plan? And then that was the IEDC's purview, the whole LEAP district in general. They have a long history of inside dealing and corruption. Should it be eliminated, reformed? What can the governor do about that agency?
Yeah. So first of all, I think any government agency or tentacles of it should operate in transparency with accountability. It's our tax dollars. It's our state. We've got one, once you do away with wetlands, there's no take backs. I mean, there's just not. And so what is the role in government in that? Holding them accountable is huge. I am not a fan of what I see happening in the state of Indiana, and it is 100% environmental blackmail. It's if you want economic development, if you want good paying jobs, then you have to give up your water. If you want great houses, you have to give up your wetland. I mean, that's environmental blackmail where they're saying if you want X, then you have to give up Y. And there's a fine line of, yes, we want economic development, but do we really have to go to the measures that they're going through? We only have 85% of our wetlands are gone for this namesake of economic development. The LEAP issue or the LEAP district issues and the innovation districts that are tied to that whole thing needs to be revisited. It's obviously a lot of people have called for a pause on it, and for the right reasons. We're not even sure if the information we got is accurate. We're not even sure that the testing that was displayed is real, is accurate. So there's a lot to that obviously the whole IEDC needs to be held accountable. That needs to be revisited, need to be looked at. But there's a whole lot of that going on that I think that they were just given so much autonomy with so little accountability that's not good governance. Like, we deserve better than that. It's our money. It's our land. It's our soil. It's our water. We deserve better than that.
Should be like the theme of the entire campaign this year statewide, if it's not already. But
yeah.
Yes, up and down the ballot. Yeah. So about that, you said you are pursuing a 92 county strategy in Indiana. 72 of the 92 counties are predominantly rural in nature. Okay, so of those 72 altogether, that's like a third of the state's population, meaning 2/3 of the state population lives in the other 20. In 2008, Barack Obama won Indiana by getting out the vote in those 20.
Right.
Are you, I hate to say wasting your time, because rural Hoosier voices are incredibly important. Do not get me wrong. But are you wasting your time in the rural counties? And how do you plan to excite the overwhelming majority of us to turn out who live in the cities and the suburbs?
Right. So it's a great question. So 92 counties means 92 counties of differing levels of priorities. So you have, priorities that you're looking at concentration of voters and then other areas of concentration of uninvolved voters where they're registered, they're just no longer voting. And so we have all that data, we'll have a targeted approach. But yet, here's what I'm also learning. You look at the LEAP district and the 20 areas that have already done a resolution, the towns and the cities and the county boards that have done resolutions saying pump the brakes on that. We have a lot of problems with this. Many of them are rural, which we can't ignore their voices. You've got great volunteers in those areas. You've got great mobilizers in those areas. So it's not that I'm going to spend, 4 out of my 5 days sitting in an area that it's very low turnout or a heavy Republican, but making sure that they are involved in the campaign, making sure they're heard during the campaign. Too often they're completely ignored, and that does not work. So we are doing some touches with all county chairs. We are getting to some of those events where they're collectively coming together. We all energizing. We have 800 volunteers right now with very little lift. People are ready to go, and many of them are from rural areas. And I will be honest, many of them are Republican. They're like, I don't like extreme. We like your message. We like that you care about people. Let's go. And so, yes, 92 counties will be part of this campaign. Our emphasis, we know where we need to be. We know where we need to spend the majority of our time, but we will not do that at the expense of, not hearing the voices of, Fountain County or Posey County. I mean, they've got to be part of the conversation. Unfortunately, 70% of Indiana's schools are seeing a declining enrollment, over half of them declining in population. We can't sustain, again, a state that the economic situation in some of our most suppressed rural areas just gets ignored. And so that's a reflection of a campaign. If you ignore them up front, you're probably going to ignore them on the back end. So yes, they will be involved in the campaign, but yes, we do know a targeted strategy.
I didn't even get into the effects of the Republican policies on rural schools, which is a whole can of worms in and of itself. But
Sure.
before we get going here, I want to give people who like your positive, forward-looking message, where can those folks find you? Where can they donate? Because we're probably going up against a multi-millionaire in the fall.
Yeah. And you know what? I am humbled at any time anybody gives a donation, no matter how big or how small. I am truly humbled because I know people work hard for their dollars. But we would appreciate volunteers. We would appreciate donations. Even $10 a month through the campaign goes a long way. That's a Starbucks coffee. So, but you can go to McCormick4gov.com. It's McCormick, and it's spelled out FOR. So McCormick4gov.com. There you can sign up to volunteer. We're getting ready to put our priority issues up. So I hope everybody takes a peek in the next couple weeks. And then also, you can go there to make donations. So there's a bio, the launch video. There's some good stuff there, but just encourage all of you. Our schedule will be put up. So if you want to attend events, we're also doing a lot of Zooms where people have said, I have a group of people and they just want to hear your message. I'm like, you get a group of people, you get their emails, we get it set up and we go. Well, you can do all that through the website. So my charge is name recognition and access. I think it's important that people's voices are heard and they know where I stand on these issues. I'm going to work really hard at trying to gain trust and support because we have the Republicans who are running, that's not an option for us. I mean, that's not an option. We deserve better than that, and we're going to show them we can do that.
Well, on behalf of my listeners here, I thank you for giving us access, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope to do it again sometime. Dr. Jennifer McCormick, everybody, thank you.
Thank you so much, Scott.
Once again, that was the Indiana Democratic Party's nominee for governor of the Hoosier State, Jennifer McCormick. Now, I got to be honest. Last year, when it became apparent Dr. McCormick was likely the only serious Democrat in the race, I wasn't super thrilled. Here we go again, I thought, nominating another cookie-cutter centrist, a Republican in Democrats' clothing. chasing an imaginary center instead of putting forward a compelling progressive. So I really wanted to understand her core values. And I believe her when she says she was never a terribly partisan person. Public school teachers, administrators, these are hardworking people without the time, generally, to be political sickos. It's serious mental and emotional work. It requires presence. You can't stay under headphones all day consuming podcasts like some of us. But they do understand the importance of public education and of organized labor. So I believe she brought the conservative values with which she was raised to the table, and she was generally apolitical until she got to the State House and saw how the sausage is made. And it turns out the nominal conservatives of the Indiana GOP aren't really out to conserve public education. I've been through this before, but it's worth saying again. The Republican coalition is a mix of economic libertarians who want to privatize every state function, and fundamentalist Christian extremists who want their religious indoctrination taught in schools. Both groups want to eliminate public education. In fact, Republicans don't want to conserve much of anything. Public education, the right to control one's own body, the environment, children's lives. These are radicals interested only in wealth and power. Again, I've been watching the GOP radicalize for decades, but if you're not a political sicko, that must be a shock to the system for a sincere public servant of any party. Do I agree with Jennifer on every issue? Probably not. We talked about this. But we do agree that quality public education is the backbone of society, that women deserve reproductive freedom, that systemic oppression still exists, that Indiana should legalize marijuana in some way, that climate change is an existential threat, that policing can be improved, that government should be conducted transparently, and most of all, that Hoosiers deserve better than we've been getting for the last 20 years. I'll take that over continued Republican supermajority rule every time. I'll take that over likely GOP nominee MAGA Mike Braun's extreme positions. Madman governor? No thanks. Madam Governor? Yes, please. Anyway, even the biggest rah-rah Democratic cheerleader knows Republicans will, in all likelihood, continue to control the General Assembly. Electing Dr. McCormick can give Hoosiers veto power over the worst GOP legislation. Her ability to appoint diverse people to boards, commissions, and especially the judiciary can help break the extreme MAGA stranglehold on our state. Just staying here in Big Ten country, look at Wisconsin and Michigan. Before Democratic governors grabbed a toehold in those state houses, both were trapped under Republican trifectas just like Indiana. Now, Michigan has a Democratic trifecta, and Michiganders have autonomy over their own bodies. Wisconsinites will finally have a chance to vote in fairly drawn districts this fall. We're a few years behind our neighbors, but Hoosiers deserve better. We can have nice things, but it starts by breaking the supermajority and electing Jennifer McCormick this November. Thanks for being with me. Again, subscribe at scottaaronrogers.substack.com. Follow me on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok at HoosLeft, and on most other social media sites at ScottRog78 if you want to reach me. Send me a DM on the socials or email me at scottrog78@gmail.com. Until next time, this has been the Who's Left podcast. I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.